Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for Friday's edition of Alaska Weather on this 9th day of October 2020. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, no watches, warnings, or advisories out around the state here for probably the next couple of days through the weekend, and up north as well, Arctic coast. So you will be seeing temperatures falling up over the northeast quarter of the state actually going on right now. It'll continue a downward trend for the next few days, but nothing that enters into the advisory category or watch category for that, and no big storms affecting the Aleutians or Bering Sea through the weekend. So from there, looking at satellite imagery, we've got a system approaching the south coast of the panhandle there, but streaming moisture northward just about across the entire area there, right on up into the eastern North Gulf Coast, with Yakutat kind of under the main area of precipitation, picking up nearly half an inch or so, or 4 to 5/10 of an inch, about half an inch in the last 12 hours. By contrast, June only had about 5/100 of an inch, and then a little bit heavier than that down along the south coast. Ketchikan getting about roughly 1/4 of an inch today with that system coming up. And also winds Cape Decision ahead of the frontal boundary there, kicking up to about 40 to 45 miles an hour. Otherwise, lighter wind conditions and more showery, the precipitation more showery in nature along the Kenai Peninsula and the Prince William Sound, also lighter. It was a narrow band of a little bit more heavier, although not that heavy, precipitation of about 1/1500 of an inch there from Homer to Seldovia, and then across the Kamishak Bay area, hits the upslope areas there on the west side of the bay, and about half an inch or 2/3 of an inch fell in some locations there, but quite a narrow area. Otherwise, king salmon, just a few hundredths of an inch of precipitation. And then with a band of clouds there over the Alaska Peninsula, Cold Bay at about 1/3 of an inch of rain today with that, and then a few scattered showers. Also some clearing, it looks like, there for the eastern Aleutians, or actually all of the Aleutian chain, in kind of a partly to mostly sort of day with some sun breaks and a few scattered showers, more numerous though up around the Pribilofs, and more clouds over the Bering Sea, but a fair amount of clearing over the interior, especially northern Susitna Valley, Copper River Basin, up into the central interior, back up to the northwest, Yukon Flats there, and all the way out into the Yukon Delta, northern Kuskokwim Delta, seeing some pretty good clearing, as well as over the Norton Sound area, up through the Bering Strait, looks fairly clear. Then back into the clouds there for the Arctic coast. Quite windy conditions continued up along the Arctic coast today, with Dead Horse reporting a peak wind gust of just under 50 miles per hour with those northeast winds, while 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts recorded at Kaktovik and Ugnu, Kaparik, as well as Point Lay in the central Arctic coast. They're also seeing gusts about 40 miles per hour. Lighter winds, but still offshore flow, produced clearing along the northwest coast, and again over the Seward Peninsula into Norton Sound, northern Bering Sea area, as well as the interior. Not too bad today. A little breezy, higher elevations saw gustier winds. Delta Junction had about 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts, as did the Indian Mountain area. Otherwise, North Gulf Coast, light rain fog with a trough there along the coast, and then again with the front there right along the coast off the coast of the southern panhandle. Weak low pressure, Kodiak Island, just some clouds and a few light showers with that, and unsettled conditions out over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians will continue through tonight. Not much change over the interior. Upper level trough there keeps a chance of light snow and flurries or snow showers going. Could see maybe any amounts would be less than an inch or so, nothing more than an inch, especially over the eastern Arctic coast there. So really no heavy snow or anything too significant up that way. Temperatures will continue to fall even into the Brooks Range. Will stay dry through tonight, and tomorrow again, west-southwest flow. Wet weather pattern continues for the panhandle, but nothing heavy. Light on the winds with showers mostly in the south and periods of light rain in the north, and light rain or showers for the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, southern Kenai Peninsula across southern Cook Inlet, Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, and the inland areas. Dry over the interior once again for Saturday. And Bering Sea, again, a couple of low centers out there. Keep the winds brisk over the western Aleutians, and chances of rain across the entire area there, but it'll be quite light, more intermittent for the Fox Islands. Could be a dry day for the Pribilofs with just a few showers around and mostly cloudy skies. Same thing for the Alaska Peninsula. And the outlook for Sunday, high pressure there off the Arctic coast. You can see it's kind of under the label. That's going to circulate southward there. Cold air will continue to come southward with upper level, cold upper low there, more over the Kenzie River Delta area. And so temperatures are going to be falling down to near zero Sunday morning for the Brooks Range, and light snow, fog, and flurries will continue for the Arctic coast. And some possible precipitation chances of a light variety there for the upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country over toward the border, nothing significant. And another front, those troughs kind of develop into another front there and bring a chance of rain to the north coast, North Gulf Coast, northern panhandle showers in the south. Checking out low temperatures for tonight, lower to mid-teens or in the teens for the Brooks Range, portion of the North Slope, otherwise mid-20s out along all of the Arctic coast, and are freezing there toward Kotzebue to Cape Lisburne, lower 40s for the Panhandle, and 25 to 35 for south central Alaska, and in the 20s Copper River Basin, near 40s for the southwest coast, lower 40s for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Highs tomorrow, mid to upper 40s in the southwest, lower 50s southern Alaska, south central, and the Panhandle. And colder up to the north there, 20 to 25 for the Brooks Range area, followed by lows just above zero there for the Brooks Range North Slope for Sunday morning, lower 20s, upper teens, lower 20s for the Arctic coast, down to near 20 there for the Greater Fairbanks area, the Greater Fairbanks area on out to Tanana, and in the 30s south of the Alaska Range, lower 40s for the Aleutians and Panhandle, followed by highs in the teens for the Brooks Range, mid-20s Arctic coast, and lower 50s south central Alaska, near 50 for the Panhandle, and mid-30s for the Tanana Valley.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving into flying weather for tomorrow, pretty good VFR over the interior from the Brooks Range southward till you hit the southern Kuskokwim Valley, and then you've got marginal VFR there from, say, Cape Romanzoff or so, St. Lawrence Island down along the southwest coast into Bristol Bay, across the Aleutian Range to the Kodiak Island area, Shelikof Strait, and then Fogneck Island through Cook Inlet, western central Kenai Peninsula, most of Turnagain Arm, VFR, Copper River Basin, VFR, marginal in the Coast Range, IFR, southern slopes of the Coast Range, Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, and the Panhandle, solid marginal VFR mostly, Aleutians, Bering Sea, and some IFR there on the North Slope and most of the Arctic coast. For the afternoon, we're looking IFR-ish there for the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast, marginal VFR, much of the North Slope across the western Brooks Range, and now a band of IFR mysteriously from Kotzebue Sound, the northwest coast, right through the central interior, over to the Yukon River around the Eagle area, both north and south, and VFR to the south of that. Marginal, narrow band along the Alaska Range, thicker though from the western Alaska Range, Kuskokwim Valley, out to about the lower Yukon River Valley area. VFR for the deltas and Norton Sound, Seward Peninsula, IFR northern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island, and Nunivak Island, marginal VFR for the Pribilofs and the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, VFR, Kodiak Island, Cook Inlet, Susitna Valley, Madnuska Valley looking for deteriorating conditions in the afternoon, and then marginal VFR with IFR over the southeast coast. Sunday morning, VFR for the Panhandle, and then areas of VFR, IFR, and marginal VFR for central and southern Alaska, with VFR there for Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, Yukon Kuskokwim Delta, and northern Seward Peninsula, VFR from the Selawik Valley and Kotzebue, Noatak Valley areas, including the northwest coast eastward across the Kobuk, Koyukuk, and upper Yukon valleys, marginal VFR. From the crest of the Brooks Range all the way out to the Arctic coast, IFR northern Bering Sea, southwest Bering Sea, and marginal for the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. For the afternoon, zone of IFR pushes eastward to Amchitka and Adak and extends northward and covers much of the northern Bering Sea to Nunivak Island along the southwest coast, inland over the Yukon Delta, and some IFR, a little more widespread now over the southeast interior, up and maybe even north of the Alaska Range, though, possibly reaching Togue and Northway, maybe Delta Junction, although it'll probably be marginal. I think Delta won't be IFR. And then down into the Susitna Valley, northern Cook Inlet, VFR. And the Panhandle looks pretty marginal, and then marginal VFR, North Slope, central and eastern Arctic coast and North Slope, VFR to the west, across the Seward Peninsula. And for passes, Anaktuvik, IFR, becoming marginal in the afternoon, a little bit of improvement both for Anaktuvik and Adigan throughout the day at the lower conditions in the morning. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, I think will become VFR into the afternoon and rainy, that same trend. However, for windy, Some moisture coming in, I believe, from the east and southeast. VFR could go marginal in the afternoon. Better chance of that, though, for Isabel to go to marginal VFR in the afternoon. And Mentasta will start out VFR, could go IFR during the afternoon hours. And Tanita, VFR possibly becoming marginal, especially on the eastern approach tomorrow afternoon. And for Portage, IFR the entire day, especially eastern entrance. And Chilcoot and White, looks like IFR for the entire day. And for the freezing levels, 2,000 feet up to the Cape Lisburne area, there along the northwest coast, 4,000 feet northern Bering Sea, and across the lower and mid Yukon River Valley areas, 2,000 feet just to the east and north of that, down into the North Gulf Coast, and 2,000 to 4,000 feet across the southeast coast. Icing, areas of light to isolated moderate rime or mixed icing there for the Panhandle, and just areas of light mixed icing possible there for the southwest interior areas, and as well as the Aleutians, just areas of nothing really too significant and even less significant possibilities, but the threat does exist up there at the eastern Arctic coast and North Slope. Jet stream showing the strong jet now is south of the area, 70 knots even south of the Aleutians there, and so pretty light wind flow aloft here over much of interior Alaska. Upper level low there, Banks Island, slowly dropping southward, northerly flow, bringing some colder air into the eastern Arctic coast, northeast interior. And at 9,000 feet, northeast flow there on the eastern Arctic coast turns easterly, but light, strongest flow again south of the area. And 3,000 feet, same pattern. Turbulence, light to ice and moderate chop for the western Aleutians and western Arctic coast. Otherwise, light to isolated moderate for the central and western Brooks Range.
Some places on the surface, you might have these steep cracks and giant fissures that you would have to be careful not to fall into. In other places, you might see towers of ice right next to places that were relatively smooth. You might see places that were dark. Ice there takes the form of rock. It's frozen solid until you dig down into that ocean. So you may see some things that look similar to Earth, but you may see some things that are very different.
That voice you just heard?
I am Morgan Kramer, NASA scientist.
I love it.
That's Morgan. She's probably one of NASA's best spokespeople for exploring our solar system's icy moons.
Europa is a fascinating place. It has this liquid water ocean that's about 3 times the volume of all of Earth's oceans combined. That's a lot of water.
To understand what makes Earth so special, sometimes you need to back up and take in the big picture. Remember, the cryosphere is every place on Earth with frozen water. And water is one of the biggest indicators for life.
Every place, at least so far, that we have found life, we found water along with it.
And so far, Earth is the only planet we know of with life. Although Europa isn't the only icy moon in our solar system, NASA has identified it as one of those places with key astrobiological potential. Morgan is a collaborator on the Mapping Imaging Spectrometer for Europa, an instrument selected for NASA's next mission to Jupiter's icy moon Europa. But she's also more than just a scientist working in a laboratory. She's preparing future NASA missions for success on the surface of alien worlds. This year, Morgan and her colleagues were in the field studying how life colonizes in fresh lava.
Earth, it turns out, has a lot of excellent, what we call analog environments, places that are similar enough to some of these other worlds that we can conduct some tests and we can do some analyses here. Now, they're not perfect, of course. They're not going to be exactly like Europa, but we can still learn a lot by testing in these environments. Some of these places include Antarctica and the Arctic Circle, but there are other places too, Alaska, Greenland, even Iceland. Any place where you have a lot of ice, because guess what the surface of Europa is made of? A lot of ice.
Studying the cryosphere doesn't just have big implications for Earth. It also matters for the frozen worlds in our own cosmic backyard.
If we're able to find life or evidence of past life on a place like Europa, that tells us that not only can life happen in other places, but it's common enough that it happened at least twice in the same tiny solar system. That means that the universe is wide open in terms of how much life we might find, the types of life we might find. It would revolutionize how we see ourselves and the possibilities for contact in the universe. It would be amazing. Oh, it's so exciting.
As it flows down the valleys, it actually carves those valleys out and it makes them deeper. And so it creates these beautiful fjords where the ice flows down, snakes out down to the ocean or to the lakes or further inland. And so that ice is flowing, it's moving. My interest in glaciers comes from the sheer size of these things and how much they're able to change on human timescales. And so the amount of mass and energy being transferred by glaciers around the globe is tremendous. It's an absolutely fascinating thing to study from space.
Mountain glaciers are some of the most charismatic parts of the cryosphere. Some might cling to the edges of cliffs at higher elevations, then lay bare and flat in a broad plain, looking cracked and weathered like elephant skin, before tumbling thousands of feet toward the sea and terminating in a dramatic calving front. They're like motion frozen in time, until they aren't. They tell a story about the distant past and yet are incredibly responsive to the present. You can understand why they'd be captivating to all of us, and especially cryospheric scientists. Meet Alex Gardner, a cryospheric scientist at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, who's going to help break down what a classic West Coast North American glacier might look like, where high amounts of snow dump onto the mountains.
And at higher elevations, there's melt in summer, but not enough melt to get rid of all of that snow. And so that snow accumulates, it compacts, it turns into ice, and it starts to flow under its own weight, and it flows down the valleys. And as it flows down the valleys, it actually carves those valleys out and it makes them deeper. And so it creates these beautiful fjords where the ice flows down, snakes out and down to the ocean or to the lakes or further inland. And so that ice is flowing, it's moving.
Alex uses satellite data to study large-scale changes in glacial ice. But 2,000 miles to the north, Chris Larson from the University of Alaska Fairbanks spends a lot of time studying glaciers from the air. He's been flying over Alaskan mountain glaciers for many years, most recently on a NASA-funded mission called Operation Icebridge Alaska. He's absolutely enamored with his local rivers of ice.
And what do you love about mountain glaciers?
Well, they're in mountains, so they're really pretty.
You couldn't ask for a better way to experience Alaska on a large scale than to go flying around for campaign after campaign and look at all of the mountains in Alaska. Truly infinite. You just feel like you'll never see the end of them, and you don't want to either.
But Chris doesn't spend weeks away from home and family for the views. Chris and his colleagues at NASA want to answer some pretty big questions by learning more about Alaskan glaciers and how they tick.
You know, why does NASA care about these? Well, they actually disproportionately contribute a large amount to sea level rise.
In the long run, as the Earth warms due to climate change, the big ice sheets and mighty outlet glaciers of Greenland and Antarctica stand to contribute the most to sea level rise, simply because the vast majority of the planet's ice is stored there. But currently, it's the world's smaller mountain glaciers in comparatively warmer places like Alaska and Patagonia that are contributing about 1/3 of all inputs to sea level rise, even though they account for only 1% of the world's ice.
Mostly due to them being dynamic. They have water at the bed, which allows them to slide fast, and they react quickly to climate change and have higher velocities than their polar counterparts.
Back at JPL, AKwx uses satellite measurements of global ice and computer models to predict ultimately how much sea level rise we might see due to climate change. But in the case of mountain glaciers, we also care about the local impacts of disappearing ice.
When we think of changes in ice sheets, we typically think of just what is the consequence for sea level rise and the future evolution of the ice sheets. But glaciers in other regions, like high mountain Asia, Alaska, the European Alps, these are places where changes in runoff matters to stream flows. In places like high mountain Asia, you have a lot of glaciers that feed the streams that flow down to populated regions. And that runoff becomes significant for water resources, irrigation, and agriculture.
Both AKwx and Chris are passionate about understanding how glaciers are changing and what it means for our planet's future. They'll continue to use tools like elevation maps from the ICESat-2 satellite and detailed airborne measurements to monitor changing ice.
By the end of the tunnel, you're about 100 feet underground, and you're surrounded by bones sticking out of the wall from the steppe bison and the mastodons. There's sticks that are 40,000 years old. There's grass that's still green, that's tens of thousands of years old.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Sea ice analysis today showing, looks like ice edge there is pressed in a little closer to the coast than it was yesterday with the east-northeast winds blowing up that way. It's drifting westward and a little bit to the south, and it'll probably continue to do so for the next couple of days. Coastal water forecasts for the panhandle there, west winds 20 knots, seas 12 feet, except for the north coast, easterlies or east-southeast 10 to 15 knots with seas at 11 feet. And the inside waters, all southerly, 10 knots, seas 2 to 5 feet, highest there for Clarence Strait. And then on Sunday, not much change, south winds 10 knots, 2 foot seas for Clarence Strait. Otherwise, the central and northern inside waters, south to southeast at 10 knots with 2 foot seas. And the south coast, southwest 15, seas 9 feet. North coast, southerlies 15 to 20 knots with 8 foot seas. And for Cook Inlet tomorrow, north 10 knots for the winds, just a breeze, 2 to 3 foot seas. West 10 knots, Kamishak Bay, about 15 knots for the Barren Islands out of the west. And kind of not too bad, light and sort of variable there for the North Gulf Coast. The west side, southeast at 10, Middleton Island area, northeast at 15, Prince William Sound, southeast winds 10 knots, 2 foot seas. For Sunday, light east winds for Prince William Sound at 10 knots, southwest 15 for the North Gulf Coast, northeast breeze at 10 knots for Cook Inlet, westerlies 15 for the Kamishak Bay area out across the Barren Islands. And for Kodiak Island tomorrow, west winds 20 knots, seas 5 to 8 feet. And for the Alaska Peninsula, west-southwest 20 to 25 knots with the small craft advisories from Cape Sarachef to Castle Cape with 9 foot seas. And Bristol Bay, small craft advisories, west winds 25 knots. And for Sunday, for the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, Cape Sarachef, all the way up into Bristol Bay, 15 knot winds from the south and southwest. Pacific side, southwest 20 knots, Cape Sarachef to Castle Cape, and then Castle Cape to Sitkinak, 15 out of the west, southwest 15, Shelikof Strait, west 20 there for the east side of Kodiak. Gale warnings tomorrow for the western Aleutians, west winds 35 knots, 12 foot seas, 30 knot winds from the west for Adak and Atka, and also small craft advisories for the Fox Islands, westerlies mostly 30 knots with 11 to 13 foot seas. And for Sunday, Unalaska Island, southwest 15 to 20, Unmak Island, west 20, Adak and Atka, west winds at 20. And for Amchitka, northwest 25, Kiska, same forecast, Shimi and Attu, all northwest 25 with 11 foot seas. And for St. Lawrence Island, that's where the strongest winds will be, northeast 25 knots with 7 foot seas. And south of Nunivak Island, westerlies at 20, south 15 for the Pribilofs, north 15, St. Matthew Island, northeast 20 for the Yukon Delta coast. And for the outlook on Sunday, we've got east winds at 20 knots for Norton Sound and northeast 20 knot winds for St. Lawrence Island with 7 foot seas. And for the Yukon Delta coast, East at 15, seas 4 feet. South 15 knots for the Kuskokwim Delta. They're south of Nunivak Island along the Kuskokwim Delta coast. And for the Pribilofs, light southeast winds at 10 knots with 5-foot seas. Small craft advisories for St. Matthew Island. North winds 25 knots, seas at 10 feet. And up along the Beaufort Sea coastline there, the central and east side, they got heavy freezing spray warnings out there with small craft advisory level winds, east-northeast 25 knots with 8 to 9 foot seas, and over toward Demarcation Point, northeast at 20. Even stronger winds on the western coast there, or continue strong, actually coming down on the east side, but remain pretty brisk. Brisk wind or small craft advisories for the western coast there, and then gale warnings from Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson, east winds 35 knots. Those drop off dramatically south of, as you head down toward Wales, just 15 knots out of the east. And then for Sunday, Wales to Cape Thompson, northeast winds 20 knots, Cape Thompson, Cape Beaufort, northeast at 30. Small craft advisories on the western Arctic coast, mostly from Point Lay on down toward Cape Lisbarn for the 25-knot winds. Lighter on the central and east side, 15-knot winds with 3 to 4 foot seas. And for tonight, again, chance of light snow, fog, flurries, snow showers, north slope on out to the eastern Arctic coast. Any accumulation, I believe, would be less than an inch or well less than an inch. Some areas won't see anything at all. And cooler, definitely a little cooler, trending down on the temperatures over the northeast interior through the weekend and the first of next week. But pretty dry to start anyway, with continued wet conditions with the Panhandle, a little bit for the North Gulf Coast, Aleutian, southern Bering Sea. No change in that pattern for Saturday, and that trough in the Gulf of Alaska develops into a front, and a weak front. Now bring an increasing chance of rain to the North Gulf Coast in the afternoon, as well as the northern Panhandle with showers to the south, dry over the interior. Colder temperatures, probably the big weather story in the northeast and along the Arctic coast.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.